Okay, so it's a little after 11 o'clock here on the West Coast. I just want to welcome everyone. Good morning, afternoon, wherever you're tuning in. Um, just want to welcome you to the Best of the Best webinar series, brought to you by Novedge, the design software superstore. My name is Vince. I'm the newest member here at Novedge, and I'll be hosting you guys through this webinar. I want to thank all of you joining us today. We're very excited not only to present Vectorworks 2011, but to have Jonathan pick up going over quick conceptual modeling. Just a little background on Jonathan. He is an architect trained in New Zealand and in the United Kingdom with over 25 years of experience. He received his Bachelor of Architecture degree from the University of Auckland in New Zealand. He later spent more than 8 years in England, where he learned to use several CAD packages, including MiniCad, and began teaching this forerunner of Vectorworks. Upon his return to New England, he established archoncad, a Vectorworks training and consulting company. He has written several Vectorworks training manuals for architects, landscape architects, educators, and design students. Jonathan is the author of the Vector Workout subscription service. So needless to say, he's truly a talent, and we're privileged to have him. Jonathan's going to speak for about the next 40 minutes or so, and after that we're going to open it back up for a question and answer Q&A session. During that time, everyone will be in listen-only mode, but please feel free to send any of your questions through into the question box. Stick around for after the webinar. We have a little special that I think all of you will enjoy. We will be recording this webinar, and it will be made available. We'll go over the details of where you can get it, how you can get it after the webinar. But having said all that, I think we'll turn it over to Jonathan. Jonathan, are you there?
Hi Vince, how are you?
Good.
Well, thanks very much. Thanks for the very nice introduction.
Yeah, I'll switch the screen over to you.
Vince, if I could just make a suggestion, why don't you just leave your microphone live, and if you see a really important question come up as I'm demonstrating, just read it out, and if it's a good question, maybe we should answer it on the fly.
Okay.
So I'm going to show my screen. Is that right, Vince? You can see Google Earth at the moment?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. So everyone should be able to see my screen at the moment. So thanks, Vince. I'm Jonathan Pickup. I'm the author of several Vectorworks manuals. Recently, with my subscription service, we looked at this topic of quick conceptual modeling, and people responded very well to it. So the background of this webinar is that we've been approached by a client. The client's got this site here. The site is surrounded by more development. This is a traditional building site in the city where I live, and it's quite a large site. It's about 1/4 of an acre. You might notice that the surrounding buildings have been subdivided, or the surrounding sites have been subdivided. So this now has 2 buildings on it, or 2 houses. This one has 2 houses. And my client's now thinking, well, couldn't I subdivide my site? Couldn't I put another house? What would it be like? So that's the idea behind the quick conceptual modeling. Now, the reason I've got Google Earth up is that there's a couple of important points. One is you could, if you wanted to, use Google Earth to capture the site plan, the location of the houses, and we know where north is, it's straight up the page. But also something really vital, down the bottom of the screen, it's got my latitude and longitude and my elevation. Now later on in Vectorworks, we're going to put in a solar, we're going to do a solar study, we're going to put in a sun, and the sun in Vectorworks, the command is called set sun position. It requires your latitude and longitude. And quite often when I'm teaching this, people say, well, I don't know my latitude and longitude. So right down the bottom of the screen, you should see 39 degrees, 30 minutes south, and 176 degrees, 53 minutes east. So that's my latitude and longitude for the site. And if I remember that or write it down, then what I should do is be able to use that when I come to put in the solar study. So let's go to Vectorworks. So here's my site. What I've done is to import my Google image, and it's a low quality, you can see it, it's not very nice, but it does give me the size, and I can measure it using tools like the Modifier scale objects. I could measure my site, and I could scale this image to the right size. Now I've already done that. I didn't want to show you how to do it unless people really question me. But I thought it would be more fun to do the 3D modelling stuff and the analysis type stuff. So I'm going to start with tracing a polygon around my site and finding the area and doing the area of the house. Now, before I get started too far, you might notice that I'm not using the standard Vectorworks workspace. I'm using a customized workspace. And part of the principle of working quickly and efficiently in Vectorworks is to actually take the workspace you get from Vectorworks and modify it. So that's what I've done, and I have, Vince, you said later on that there's going to be a special offer that people should be happy to hear about. I just wondered whether I should advise people what things are going to be part of that special offer, and that was all. So first of all, edit your workspace. That'll make you more efficient. Now I've got some notes. I've written a manual that follows this very quickly, very closely, this webinar. So there, in that manual, it tells you how to edit your workspace. So I've created or moved all my tools around to make it quicker for me. What I'm going to do now is trace around my site. I've got locusts for the start point, but down here I don't. If you hit the Z or the Z key in Vectorworks 2011, it's a quick zoom. So that's my polygon for my site. It's not yet closed, so I can close it that way. I also have a class. Now, I'm going to use a lot of classes today to do things like calculate areas of site, area of house, compare one against the other. I've already created all of those classes, but it's a very important point to make sure that you're using classes for the right thing. So you can use classes for graphic style or for counting. And today I'm going to use classes for both of those things. So I have a class for this object. And that allows me to see through my object. What I need now is an outline of this house. So I'm going to use rectangles. Using the right mouse click, I can add all those rectangles together into one polygon, and then I can change the class of that polygon so that I can count it. Now, ideally, I should be drawing this information on a separate layer so that I don't always have the Google map behind me. This is a site survey, so you've got two methods of getting this information. One, use an image from something like Google Image or Google Earth, but the other one, the better one, is to get a surveyor to go on site and actually measure everything for you. Now my image is actually quite crude, and when I come to do my calculations of areas, there's a lot of errors that could be in there. A survey reduces those errors for you. So that's something to consider, not to use the Google Earth image, but to actually go and get it surveyed. I know it costs more money, and you have to know whether the client's willing to do that. If they don't want to do that, they just want a very quick sketch, Google Earth, great. No cost, but be careful of the errors. Site survey, much better quality, much more accurate, but of course you're going to have to pay a surveyor to do it for you. So I now have an area for my site and an area for my house. What I could do now is to create a worksheet, or a simple Vectorworks spreadsheet, that can count up these two areas. I'm going to create a new resource called a worksheet. So I'm not going to worry too much about its name. It needs to be 15 rows and 4 columns. So we have our existing site. And we have, so this is going to be my existing site calculation. So the existing site, just be careful of my spelling, existing site, existing building, and my percentage cover. I can format cells to make it easy to read. So it should make it easy to read. You can see existing site calculation. So let's actually calculate the size or the area of my site. Vectorworks has a whole lot of functions we can use. This one's pretty cool, criteria area. And I also want to do a criteria. In other words, what are we going to look for? What's the filter we're going to use? Paste criteria. So I'm going to make sure that my objects are on my site plan layer. Click on more choices. We're going to use a class. So first of all, the object has to be on the right layer. That'll stop me selecting anything that might be on the same class but is somewhere else. What class do we want to use? Existing site. How many objects meet that criteria? Just the one. To make it a formula in Vectorworks, you have to put in an equals, and let's do that. So now I know how big my existing site is. Now I'm currently using square meters as my area, and if people want me to change to square feet, let me know and I'll change it to square feet. Format cells. What kind of number are we going to use? Dimension area. So this will actually pick up my unit settings from my units dialog box and put them into my worksheet. They are in square meters. So if I change to square feet, it'll change here on my worksheet as well. Let's do all that again, this time for the area of the house. So equals. Let's put my criteria in.
Jonathan, quick question. How would you change your units to square feet?
Cool. All right. If I do that just in a minute, Vince?
Yeah.
Just let me finish this and then we'll change it and update our worksheet.
Yeah.
So existing house. So we get our layer as our mod site plan, our class is our existing house. There's only one object meets that criteria. Okay. And we'll do our format cell again. Now all of our unit settings are under File, Document Settings, Units. So my lengths are millimeters at the moment. I can change that to feet and inches if you want. And my area is square meters. Let's change that to square feet. So the beauty of using format cells in the criteria area command is that it actually converts directly to the units you're using. So if you want it in square feet, there it is, square feet. So what's the percentage? So of my building, what percentage of my site does that cover? So equals that divided by that times 100. And there's my percentage, 19% cover. I can put in a trailer of 1%, and then we have 19.2% cover on my existing site. So now what we can do is we can put the spreadsheet aside, and now we can start saying, well, what would we like to do with our site? Let's draw a proposed site and an existing site. So starting here, I think what I'm going to do is have my site a little bit more room for the front. And it's just made a little mistake there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click there and then fill it, close it manually like that. So that gives me an area of nearly 600 square feet, sorry, 6,000 square feet there. And I'm just going to change that class. Proposed site 1. Okay, let's fill in quickly the back site. Proposed site 2. So I now have a site 1 on a class and a site 2 on a class. What I need now is a new area for this house. The polygon tool's got this really cool trick with a paint pot. So I just click, creates another polygon for me. This is proposed house number 1. Now I'm just, at the moment I don't know what size house to put in there. I don't know how much will fit. I don't really have any idea of a design. So I'm just going to drag a copy of the existing house. So I've got two houses exactly the same size. Let's put the second house on proposed house 2. Now I've changed the graphic qualities of my class so that when I put it on proposed house 2 it looks darker, so that when I present it to the client it's easier for them to see where the existing house is and where the proposed house is. So all I need to do now is to go through my worksheet and create 2 copies of this. One for the proposed site 1 and one for proposed site 2. Now, I hope you guys don't mind, but instead of going through all the steps, I've already created one earlier. So there's my existing areas, there's my proposed area 1, proposed area 2, and these are just calculations very much like the existing areas, but using the proposed site 1, proposed site 2, proposed house 1 and proposed house 2. So let's update and see what our figures are. Now I checked the building regulations in the area where this house is and I'm allowed to have up to 50% coverage. So at the moment both my houses comply with my building regulations. One of the reasons I've used classes in this area is so that if, for example, we look at this house and we realize it used to have a garage, it's got no off-site parking at the moment, it's got no garage, why don't I actually draw a little garage on here? Now how can I add that garage quickly to my calculation? Well, because I'm using classes, all I need to do is to assign that to the correct class, proposed house 1, and then update my calculation. Do the same for this house. So classes give you a lot of flexibility with moving or counting, putting it into the schedule. And so far it's been really quick, just creating these areas, doing the calculation and sort of moving stuff around. So I can stretch areas like this house by double clicking. I can make the house bigger. Does it still comply? Getting close to the edge now, but now we know how much area we can put in there. The question I guess in my mind is, if you build a house of that size, aren't we worried about the cost of it? I see there's a question about setback requirements, and there are setback requirements, but I don't want to look at them just at the moment. I'd like to do them in a minute. Okay, before we go too far, we could look at the cost of the land and the cost of the building. So let's say, for example, I don't know how much land costs per square feet. Let's say it costs $10 a square foot. Because I've got a calculation here which says multiply that cost times the area you found, it'll give me a price straight away. So if it's $8 a square foot, it gives you a cost. What about the building area? So if it costs $100 a square foot to build a house, how much is my house going to cost? So if it's a very high quality house, maybe it's going to cost more, maybe $150 a square foot. And so straight away you're now starting to get areas, costs, will it fit on the site? Now this is before we've even looked at it in 3D and looked at our setback challenges. Now I think that at this point you've got a lot of information that you could go back to the client and say, hey look, I found that you can build a house of this size. And they say, great, let's build it. And I say, well, it's going to cost about this much. And they say, oh, well, hold on, I haven't actually got that much money. And besides, houses in this area just don't sell for that much. So it gives you a lot of information really quickly. Vince, I don't know how long we've been going here, but it's probably only, 15 minutes or so?
Yeah, you've got plenty of time.
I mean, look, 15 minutes, and we've already got this much information. I just think this is really powerful, and it's pretty cool. But at the moment, none of this is in 3D. So what can we do in Vectorworks to quickly generate some 3D stuff? Well, one of the things we've got in Vectorworks is a tool called the massing model. It's in here somewhere, there it is, the massing model. So the massing model allows you to create a quick building, so you can trace around the building, so on. It'll give you a height, give you a roof, pitched roof, flat roof, give you an angle on the roof, and so on. There's actually a quicker way. There's a command here called Objects from Polyline. I've added the Objects from Polyline to my right click. So this is my existing house. I right click on it, Objects from Polyline, use a massing model, okay, and there's a whole lot of settings, so I'm just going to have a quick look at that. Site, where is it, massing model, existing, cool. Got my height, got my angles. Now I've gone through and made all these settings. So someone actually has pointed out, of course, that I've set off all my layers and classes ahead of time. But of course you could do that. You could have a template set up with all your layers and classes in it already, ready to go. And that would save you a lot of time on every project. So let's go okay and see what we get. Simple house. Let's look at this. Objects from Polyline, massing model. This time, proposed walls, proposed roof. So I have set up classes. I've gone through. I spent quite a lot of time getting my layers and classes, working classes, putting graphic attributes on them. So there we are. So can we turn that in 3D and have a quick look? Now the information in the background, this is just plain, this is screen information. I haven't chosen to put this on the layer plane, but I could. But I just wanted to show you the stuff that we got here. I could use my visibility tool and turn some of these things off. So now what we can do is spin this house around. There's our two houses. So is there anything else we could do with these? Well, if we did import a site survey, we could have all the contour lines. And we can use the commands in Vectorworks. There's one called, which allows you to turn these polygons into a site model. So we could create a site model. Now, I spent a bit of time, and I made this one earlier. So, when I say it's only taken me 15 minutes, it's actually taken me a lot longer. But I do have a site model, and I have some setbacks. And I've created the setbacks as 3D planes. So, can I see both of those together? If I use the unified view, that'll work. I'll be able to see both layers together. If I select these two objects, I should be able to use a command to lift those in 3D and sit them directly on the site. So under AEC, terrain, and center surface. So now I've got my building sitting at the correct three-dimensional heights. Of course, if you've got a surveyor to survey your site, you should perhaps get some points from the survey about where these corners of the buildings are and make sure that you've checked them in 3 dimensions. Do you need landmark to set up the site model? Architect has the ability to create site models, to create site modifiers. Landmark also does. But if you haven't got Architect and you haven't got Landmark, then I'm afraid you can't do a site model. So we've now got our 2 buildings sitting on our site, and we've got setback requirements. So let's just check our setback requirements. I've created a 3-dimensional object to give me my setback requirements. I've also created a texture and assigned it to that object. So when I render, I should see whether my building is complying. Now there's a big grey area on my roof, and the rest of it's this pinky colour. The grey area is actually penetrating my height boundary or my recession planes or my setbacks. So I have to go back to my model and push it. I could render it in a plan view, of course, and then I'd see a little bit more clearly. I'm a bit rough with this. We could do it more accurately. We could actually have measured that area, but I was just being a bit rough, so you can see you can push and pull it around. Now I think one of the great things would be to grab the surrounding houses and copy those surrounding houses and put them on here. Now it takes me a little while to draw each surrounding house. Luckily I've got a survey which I can copy. So those polygons represent my surrounding buildings. I can use my massing model again. Make sure I assign the massing model to the right parts. So now what I'd like to be able to do is to see, when I look at this building, is it going to be adversely affected by this one, by the shadowing? But I need a sun. So how do I put in a sun? View. Normally it's view, lighting, set sun position, but I've modified my workspace to make it easier to find. So I've put in my latitude, put in my longitude, put in my time zone. I'm at Greenwich Mean Time plus 12. That's what this means, Greenwich Mean Time. And let's look in summer. Where I live, summer is in December. And also, where I live, the sun comes from the north. So let's look at this at 9 AM. I notice all my site models are on the ground at the moment. Let's get all those messy models and center surface. So if we render the view, what do we get? We have our sun. So our sun is set to be summer. We now know what the summer's like. I mean, that house at the back, the grey one, it's actually pretty big. It's not probably the design that I'd like, but I'm only using it to show you what you could possibly put there. We have a palette called the Visualization palette. So window on the menu bar, palettes, visualization. And I've got a light here, light number 1. Let's just select that, because I don't find light number 1 very descriptive. So let's make this December 9 AM. Let's create another light. Let's make it March 9 AM. Okay, I've got to undo that. Now, because I had that light selected, when you use the set sun position, it doesn't create another light, it changes the old one. So I need to fix that. View, set sun position, March 22nd. Cool. So I've now got 2 lights. This is my new light, so this is March 9 AM. Make sure nothing's selected. Let's put in another one. And this time I'm going to call it June. June is my winter solstice. So what we've got here is 3 lights. If I turn off the December light and I turn off the March light, I can only see the June light. So the visualization palette gives you the ability to turn lights on and off. I can turn on March, turn on December, so on. You can turn on all the lights all together. You know, it's not going to give you what you probably want. Let's go back to a plan view. There's a Renderworks tool called the Renderworks Camera tool. Because I want to see, I'm going to use the Renderworks Camera tool. I'm going to play with the height, and I'm going to play with things like the angle of view, and we'll see what it looks like. First of all, I don't know what it's going to be like, so let's just display the camera view, and it's kind of low. I'm down too low on the ground. Let's fine tune our camera. I can play with the camera height. I can pan the camera left and right. I can play with the camera distance. So I can play with all these things until I get it just the way I want. So let's render that view. And now we can see what the effect of our neighbours across our proposed building. Someone asked how I managed to get the surrounding buildings to sit on the site model, and the answer is that I've actually got a site model that covers those. So I've actually got a really massive site model, covers not just my site, but also the surrounding buildings. So wouldn't it be nice if I could make a viewport from that? So view, create viewport. So this is going to be December 9 AM viewport. December 9 AM. What layers do we want to see? We can choose our classes, all that kind of stuff, and our rendering's already selected. I've chosen to use custom scale, and that's because I need to shrink these down to get, I want to have 3 across the top of my page. So let's put one over here. I'm going to copy that viewport across the page. I'm hoping to get 3 across. I'm not going to make it, but I'm going to do it anyway. They're not going to fit. I should really get the scale, change the scale maybe. Can we make that maybe 450 and get all get all three, and I need three across the page. I'm going to have to change the size anyway. So I've got three viewports, one right across the page. Now, if I select the first viewport, my visualization palette changes, and the visualization palette now says that it relates to the selected viewport, and December is the light that's on. I'm selecting the middle viewport. I can turn off December and turn on March, and I can select the last viewport and turn on June. So you do have individual control over the lights in every viewport. So we've now got December, March and June, or if you prefer, summer solstice, equinox, winter solstice. And now we can see the light effect of those buildings on our proposal. So if we go back and change our proposal, what will happen to our viewports? If I double click on my site, if I double click on my massing model, Vectorworks picks up this tool here, the 2D reshape tool. I can now stretch my massing model. Let's go back and have a look at our studies. Let's update them all. So they update. So this is just using the massing model. Vince, have we got time for me to have a little play with the PushPull tool to change it from a hip roof house into something a little bit different?
Yeah, I mean, you've still got 15 minutes, so if you can get it done in that time, absolutely.
Well, I wanted to leave room for questions, that was all.
Yeah, so yeah, we can go a little over. It's not a big deal.
Okay. So first of all, here's my massing model, and I'm going to convert that massing model to a group. Once I've converted the massing model to a group, I can double click on it and edit the group. So this object is now a Vectorworks roof. So if I wanted to, I can make that a gable. So I've changed it from the standard ugly old hip roof now to a gable roof. I thought that was pretty cool doing it like that. You might have to move it back in 3D. Okay, let's ungroup that, and we'll delete our roof, and that should be a polygon. So that polygon, what can we do with it? At the moment it's in screen plane. I'm going to change that to layer plane. And if we turn our view around, we can use tools like the PushPull tool. We can just type in the distance that we want. So what should we make it? 15 feet high maybe? Doesn't really look high enough, so I'm just going to pull it up a bit more. Make another 10 feet. Now at the moment that object is not sitting on my site, so we need to use that move center surface command again. If we render it, we'll find out that really goes through the height to boundary or the recession planes. So we could use our PushPull tool to push that side in. A bit too far, I guess. We can push the height down. We can do all kinds of stuff. It's probably pushed it down a bit too far. I think it's going to be easier if I delete some of the other information. Now, normally you wouldn't delete it, but I'm just going to delete it to try and make it easy for you guys to see it. So what kind of things could we do with the push-pull tool? Well, we could, if we use it in combination with the working plane, we could do things like this. So let's draw a line from there across there. I don't really want that line to go all the way across. So push-pull tool, can we do anything with that again? So using this mode, select. Doesn't seem to do it, doesn't, oh, I'm working, of course, on a working plane, that should be fine. Let's draw a rectangle on here then. I'm working in the screen plane. So what can I do with that? Should we try maybe select that, select our block, maybe we can pull that end of the building down, leaving the other one up. If we set a working plane on the front of this part of the building, maybe what we could do is to draw something like a window or a garage. So could we pull that in? So how far do I want that to go in? Let's say -2 feet. So what you can do with this push-pull tool is to start pushing, pulling, moving bits around. I'm going to put my working plane back up onto here. Put a rectangle in this area here. And I'm going to make that into a little tower maybe. So back to my push-pull tool, that object, that block, and pull that up. And so you can start to model. So instead of just making do with the masking model, you can now start to push and pull. You can put circular windows in if you want. You can do all kinds of stuff to this. So I think, Vince, we should leave some time for questions and answers.
Yeah, let's jump right into them. Got a quick one right here. Is it possible to make a curved shape with the push-pull tool or anything not rectangular?
Well, the push-pull tool tends to pull planar objects. So they tend to be extruded type objects, but they don't have to be rectangular objects if you don't want. So let's put a working plane on there, and I'll do a curvy shape on there. So push-pull tool. So does that answer the question? I could cut this corner. I could cut the face of that with a curve as well. So you can. So the push-pull tool tends to work with planar objects, but you can make them kind of curvy if you want.
Yeah. Okay. So here's another one. Can you develop a quick roof for this model?
Well, I could have done until I did that curve on the top of that funny building, but it depends what you mean by a quick roof. So, for example, the building's now all over the place with lots of different planes, but if it was still a planar roof, then you could probably use things like a rectangle and then create a roof from that object. Or if I wanted to, I could use tools like my split tool. Let's go back to that view. Okay, let's go back to setting the working plane on the face of this building, and I'm going to look at my object. So things like the split tool work. I don't know whether you thought maybe you wanted like a 45-degree roof, but you could. Now that just need to make sure I need to cut through the bits I want. Unfortunately, it's cut through the whole model. So that's the push-pull tool works much better on these sort of blocky objects to start with. I'm not sure if that answers the question about the quick roof, but
yeah, that's okay. Here's another. We'll start from the top. Can you bring elevations / ground contours in from Google Earth? For example, dimensional image of the ground.
I've not seen that from Google Earth. I've not seen the three-dimensional stuff, so I don't know how to answer the whole question. But if you can bring in polygons, you can convert those polygons into a site model. You don't need Landmark for a site model. You can use Architect to create a site model. But there are several things you can use with Vectorworks to create a site model. 3D locus points, you can use 3D polygons, you can use 2D polygons and convert them. So there are lots of choices. If Google Earth will give you 3D polygons, then yes, you can.
Okay. Here's another one. Is it possible how the dimensions are presented? For example, could square meters be displayed as meters squared?
No.
Okay. Next
Sorry,
one.
I just thought a simple question, a simple answer would do.
Yeah, that's totally fine. This was back when you were filling the design. Are you filling with a class or moving into the class?
No, you're moving into a class. The class controls the graphic style of the objects. So I think it's when I was using the polygon tool with the paint pot mode, the create polygon from inner boundary. You click and it fills that object up with your active class, which currently is none. You then go to the object info palette and change that to the class you want, and then it picks up the graphic attributes of that class.
Okay. Here's another quick one. How did you get a second light?
As long as nothing's selected, and you go back to view on the menu bar, and you set the sun position, it'll put another light in.
Okay.
So let's go back to December and make it 12 p.m. That puts another light in. So if I open up my visualization palette, you see I've got more lights.
Okay. Here's a broad question. What type of processor does your computer use?
It's got an i7 processor, this one.
Okay. Here's another quick one. Is the push-pull tool available only in here's the push-pull tool available in Landmark? Only.
Yes, it is, but not only in Landmark. The push-pull tool is a part of Vectorworks 3D modeling, part of fundamentals. So if you've got Vectorworks fundamentals, then you've got the push-pull tool. It normally sits in the 3D modeling toolset. It's this one here. But I've moved it to my basic toolset because for this type of work, you're going to do a lot of it. You're going to do a lot of pushing and pulling. So why not move the tool to make it easy to get to? Now someone asked, I think, Vince, didn't they? How did I edit the right mouse click? Well, there's actually a lot of things you can change. I can show you how to edit the right mouse click. I can show you how to move tools around, but we've really got limited time. So as part of the manual that I wrote on doing this quick conceptual modeling, I added a section or a chapter on how to edit your workspace. So there are movies about that. So can you see this appearing now, Vince? I've got all these different views. So I've got 9 a.m., 12 p.m., and 3 p.m. And it goes summer, equinox, winter. So you can see what the winter sun's like. You can see what the middle of the year sun's like. You can see what the summer sun's like. And so it goes 9, 12, 3 p.m. And it's real quick to make these. I didn't actually make all of them, but you saw me make 3. And as long as you've got the right lights in, you can just make these extra ones. And I think it gives you a lot of really powerful looks to this thing. You might notice that I've got quite an unusual modern design for my building. It's got holes, it's got different blocks of different heights, and I'll cut bits off, so I use the split tool, I use the push-pull tool, and I've got those boundary setbacks so that I know that my building complies with those boundary setbacks, so that at this stage, and this took me a couple of hours to get to this point, But at this stage, you know that you're complying with the building regulations, you're complying with the areas, you're complying with setbacks and volumes and building heights and sun, and I think it's really powerful. It gives you a lot of information to go really quickly.
Okay, here's another good question. How do I ensure I'm at the right coordinates for the proper lighting? As in, where do I enter the geographic coordinates for the original polygon?
I don't think you need to assign the correct geographical coordinates for the polygon, because when you set a sun position, you're saying to Vectorworks at that point, this is my location. Here is my latitude and longitude, and it puts the sun relative to that.
Okay. Just get a couple more here. Can a mass model be defined as a DTM modifier?
Yes, it can. I didn't cover that, but I don't know if people can see just in the corner of this particular viewport. There's a bit of a shadow there. Can you see that, Vince?
Yeah.
That shadow's left over from an earlier massing model that I used as a digital terrain model modifier. So when you do put a massing model in and you say use modifiers, it'll actually cut or fill your site model. So the massing models I think are pretty neat. You can do lots of stuff with them.
Okay, here's another one. Where's the create light command when you haven't moved it around?
Normally it's in the view menu, and normally it's right here and it says lighting. Underneath perspective it normally says lighting.
Okay, just get a couple more here. Here we go. Can you bring 3D polygons in from Google Earth through SketchUp, then develop a site model for that in a variety of ways?
If they're 3D contours, you can create a site model. If they're just 3D polygons, they don't automatically make a site model. They might make a site terrain, but a site model by definition is a particular special Vectorworks object which you can then use for creating contours, creating cut and fill. Site models work to it, send to surface works to it. Send to surface will only send objects to sit on a site model, a Vectorworks site model, and that's a mathematical model created inside Vectorworks. So just bringing in 3D polygons doesn't automatically do that. But in Vectorworks you can create a site model. Unless I'm wrong, I think you can only create it from 3D loci or 3D polygons or 2D polygons converted to one of those two.
Okay, here's another one. How were you able to put your adjacent bids on the surface of larger site model when it was invisible?
Let me go back to my site model. I think they're talking about the surrounding buildings. So when you create a site model, now I haven't got time to go into all the details about site model, but one of the options you've got in site modeling is to create a boundary for your site model. So you can actually create a much broader site model and then cut it down so it just looks like it's your site, but actually the mathematical information goes out in both directions. It was actually much bigger. My original site model was actually huge. It was like 3 or 4 sites wide.
Oh, okay. And then here we'll just get to one more. Is there any way to create retaining wall type modifiers in Vectorworks Architect?
Well, there isn't a retaining wall tool in Architect. You need Landmark for that. But you can cheat by making site modifiers yourself. So provided you make the right kind of site modifier, then you can create a retaining wall type thing.
Okay.
Now,
so
that may not help, but we haven't got a whole, like site modeling, we could do a whole webinar just on site modeling. There's quite a lot to it.
Yeah, okay. So I think that'll about do it for the questions. Sorry to anyone that got passed up. It's just we have such a short time to do this. I just want to thank Jonathan again for doing this. It was a really fascinating presentation, really well done. I'm just going to switch the screen back to mine really quick. So yeah, again, I want to thank everyone for attending Novedge's presentation of the best webinar series. For those of you who don't know, I just want to give you a little background on Novedge. We're the leading online design software superstore. Not only do we have the best prices around, but our staff is awesome, incredibly knowledgeable. You can call or chat with us anytime. I mentioned earlier that there is a deal as part of registering and attending this webinar, and the deal is all attendees will get Jonathan Pickup's ebook for only $69, a 30% discount off the list price. We'll send to you guys who attended and are interested an email with the information and the discount tomorrow. So for those of you who are interested in that, you'll be getting that. I'd also like to draw your attention to another bit of information that is a benefit to you. Here at Novedge, we look to continue to go above and beyond for the design community. We've created several communities to foster the collaboration and communication between design professionals. One such community, as you can see on your screen, is Vectorworking. If you're not already a member, it's free, easy to sign up. When you do, you gain instant access to all the latest information, trends, news, videos, tutorials, all things 3D modeling. This webinar will be available online through Vectorworking. Jonathan is actually a current member of Vectorworking, so it's a great chance to collaborate with him. So again, I mean, if anyone has any questions, feel free to email me. My email's up there, vince@novedge.com. Any questions or concerns, I would love to hear them. You can visit our website, novedge.com/webinar series, for a list of upcoming webinars. And if Jonathan, if you have nothing else to say, I think that's it.